Hello, everyone, and this is the Very Cold Lasagna Podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Lasagna, and this is episode number 237 of this icy yet spicy podcast for all the filthy casual takes on the world of sports. And in this episode, we're here to talk about another week that was and will be around the 2024 NFL season, this past week being week number 17, and the week that will be the regular season finale, week number 18 in this NFL season. And Happy New Year to you all. Happy 2025. It's a new year. Yes, it is. And a new year for Very Cold Lasagna. So we're going to get right into it. Make sure you follow Very Cold Lasagna on social media. Listen to the show wherever you get your podcast. And watch the show on YouTube. Smash the like button. Smash the subscribe button. Leave your takes in the comments below on the topic at hand. And share this with your friends, share this with your neighbor, share this with a stranger, share this with your colleagues, whether it's at work or school. Share the good, the bad, the ugly about this filthy casual show for the filthy casual sports fans out there, entitled Very Cold Lasagna. That being said, let's get into it. The week that was around the NFL. First, week number 17 in the NFL. So, the playoff picture. Continuing to round out into form. It's the second to last week, what I call the penultimate week in this NFL season, where the new year is almost about to ring in, which was last week, but nonetheless, this new year is about to come in, and so is the playoffs. Playoffs? Yes, I said that right. Playoffs. This playoff picture is really starting to round out, and we're about to find out who's going to be in and who is going to be out. So, before this week 17, let's check in on the current playoff picture heading into this past week 17. So, already in the playoffs was the Bills, the Chiefs, the Lions, the Eagles, the Steelers, the Texans, the Vikings, the Ravens, and the Packers. But let's also not forget the people that were already on the January Cancun cruise. Those teams being the Giants, the Raiders, the Jaguars, the Patriots, the Jets, the Browns, the Titans, the Panthers, the Bears, the Saints, the Cowboys, the Cardinals, and my San Francisco 49ers. So all those teams already thinking about their vacation plans for Cancun or wherever they're heading in January, all the way up until May, because, well, that's when the real work begins for the next NFL season. So there's still a lot to be sorted out for the other teams that were still either eligible for a playoff spot or for the division titles or for seeding. But there are also teams still eligible that could join along the Cancun cruise. So we'll talk about it when we get there. So we had some holiday themed games around this week 17, and that started off with a Christmas Day doubleheader that we could only see for some reason on Netflix. Yeah, only on Netflix for however much they're selling it. What's the price on Netflix? I don't know. I don't know why it's on Netflix. I don't know why streaming is the future, pal, with all that buffer and all that lag. I don't know why all these companies want to go that route, but that's another side tangent for another day. But nonetheless, surprisingly, it didn't buffer, it didn't lag, but I'm not saying I went the that route. But nonetheless, with the Christmas Day doubleheader on Netflix, we kicked things off with the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And this was not very competitive at all. Patrick Mahomes threw 2 early touchdowns as his defense sacked Russell Wilson into oblivion and shut the Steelers down to clinch the AFC's top seed and get home field advantage to assure the AFC runs through Arrowhead once again, 29-10. And, well, here we are again, ladies and gentlemen. I said it before I believe it was mid-season. And I'll say it again. The Chiefs were eventually going to come back to life. They're going to return back to their previous form of, them dominating. Patrick Mahomes, he's not the exact same quarterback that he was a year or two ago. But, I mean, he's still making the plays. And, more importantly, most of the team is healthier now. You got some of the key pieces back like Hollywood Brown, Isaiah Pacheco, and they got some additional pieces that were in their void, like DeAndre Hopkins, Kareem Hunt. And also keep in mind, this was a defense that also didn't have Chris Jones out for this week. So this team is relatively healthy, and they're peaking at the right time. So for those teams that had plenty of opportunity to go and hand Kansas City loss after loss after loss, well, for those that didn't capitalize on that, well, you lost out on that opportunity. And if the Chiefs continue to peak, especially in a couple weeks in their first playoff game in mid-January, well, it's only a matter of time before the inevitable reality sets in for the remaining 31 teams in the NFL come February, if no one can stop them. Meanwhile, for the Steelers, like what happened to this team? Like, really? Like, the defense has completely regressed. They've allowed so much open space to the Chiefs' passing options. And even though they got George Pickens back on offense, it's literally made no difference. Russell Wilson, he's eaten so many sacks. It's like he can't get out of the pocket for some reason. Like, they're looking like a one and done team. They're looking like they're gonna lose in the first round on the road. They're looking like they're not gonna get the division from the Ravens. They got surpassed by Baltimore. So it's not looking good for the Steel City after such a promising start to the season. So speaking of the Ravens, they took on the Texans in the other Christmas Day game, only on Netflix, by the way. As Lamar Jackson threw 2 touchdowns while also rushing for one long one, surpassing Michael Vick in all-time rushing yards, and a total beatdown in H-Town, 31-2. Yes, just 2 points. And man, the Ravens, I think they might have finally rounded into complete form just in time for the playoffs. Their defense is playing much better football, even with lapses in their passing defense. But that said, passing defense has been playing much better in the last month. That it severely limited C.J. Stroud's chances of reaching the end zone. And again, they only allowed a safety, but other than that, I don't think C.J. Stroud and that offense even went past midfield. So, yeah, that defense for the Baltimore Ravens, it's starting to click. Zach Orr's defense, it's getting hot at the right time. Meanwhile, for the Texans, just like with the Steelers, their first round exit waiting to happen, and it's unfortunate too. These injuries to Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell, it's really reduced the production of the offense. And I hate to admit it, but I think CJ Stroud's also regressing as well. And it might have to also do with the lack of weapons, but maybe he's like melting as well. He's putting so much pressure on himself because, well, he has no weapons. His offensive line sucks. But yeah, something is definitely going on with this Texans team. Like, their promising season is more than likely going to end at the hands of either a Steelers or Chargers in short time. So then we had the last Thursday night football game of the season, only for that Jeff Bezos money, pal. And this probably is a contender now for the worst Thursday night football game ever in the history of our sport, because neither team could do jack shit in this game besides 9 total first half points. And that was pretty much it. That was all the scoring in the first half. But hell, Seattle won't care. Seattle's defense let Caleb Williams self-destruct enough to get the game-winning interception at the end of the game, as Seattle took care of business to beat the Bears 6-3 in this one. But man, even if the Seahawks somehow managed to win the NFC West in their meeting next week, no way in hell they're getting past the first round, because their offense is just as stuck at the Rams, if not even worse, because DK Metcalf is playing through multiple injuries. But even then, if he wasn't playing through multiple injuries, it's like they're just stuck in a rut. They're, again, going back to the point I made a month ago about this offense. They're overly reliant on DK Metcalf. Like, what happened to getting Jackson Smith-Njigba involved? What happened to getting Tyler Lockett involved? There's no running game. Even with or without Kenneth Walker in the lineup, it's like they can't do anything. Like, this offense is stuck in neutral. But about that point about getting into the playoffs, more than a bit, because I want to talk about the Bears and their upcoming coaching search. Thomas Brown really needs to be nowhere near this this coaching search process for Chicago, because he has even worse clock management than Matt Eberflush. It's like his clock management and play calling is even worse. It killed the momentum that the Bears were going to have to try and win this game, unless he was trying to really choo-choo tank their chances of getting a top 10 pick. But he was successful in continuing to tank. But for example, the man called 3 straight passing plays for Caleb at the end of the game before he threw a game losing interception. Yet he couldn't dial up at least a running play or two with a timeout in between. He had a timeout in that last drive. Yet he didn't want to call it. He dialed up 3 straight passing plays that felt incomplete, and then Caleb on 4th down yeeted a ball and it got intercepted easily. Yeah, that's not your future head coach for the Bears. Then we had a Saturday triple header, only on the NFL Network, pal. Yeah, there's a lot of exclusivity with these non-Sunday games, pal. That Saturday triple header started with the LA Chargers taking on the New England Patriots, as Justin Herbert connected with Ladd McConkey twice in the end zone in this easy win that sealed up the Chargers' playoff spot 40-7 over the Patriots. And underneath this easy win was the emergence of a couple different playmakers for the Chargers, like J.K. Dobbins, Darius Davis, and Stone Smart, all of whom are playing larger roles. The Davis and Stone Smart, and then Dobbins just came back from injury, and he's such a big difference maker for their running game. And for the Chargers under Jim Harbaugh in their first year, been pretty successful. They could have given Kansas City a challenge, but there's still a few pieces. They might still be a few pieces away from that, but a major difference from what they had with Brandon Staley and the other coach doesn't ring a bell for me. Justin Herbert's first coach, but nonetheless, if they get a couple more pieces and somehow a playoff win with Jim Harbaugh, then this first year will be even more successful. And if you're the Patriots, yeah, they lost another game, but this loss may end up being a big win for them by the end of this weekend. More on that in a bit, though, because we got to talk about this Bengals and Broncos game that went the distance, that really went the distance, as Bo Nix, he made this really nice touchdown to Marvin Mims to get the game into overtime. But yeah, that really nice touchdown by Bo Nix, it was undone because Joe Burrow, he scored the game-winning touchdown in the extra period to T. Higgins, as the Bengals saved their playoff hopes and prevented the Broncos from clinching theirs for one more week. The Bengals beat the Broncos in this very critical game for both teams, 30-24 in overtime. And yeah, T. Higgins really came through for Cincinnati with a big season-saving performance that really makes you think for Cincinnati. Why did you place the franchise tag on me? Why did you not sign me to a longer-term extension? Like 3 touchdowns, over 130 over 100 yards of receiving, including the game-winning touchdown catch. Higgins really torched this Denver defense. The all game, especially with Jamar Chase draped up by Pat Surtain II. T. Higgins really proved his worth. He proved that he could be a top receiver, as Joe Burrow frequently targeted him against this Denver defense. Meanwhile, if you're Denver, yeah, it really sucked that you fell short again of clinching a playoff spot. And I really hope they do clinch a playoff spot, because for as much as the Bengals really had probably one of their best games of the year, they're going to need a lot of help to nab that playoff spot. So Denver, on the other hand, they're going to have a promising they had a promising year, especially with how Bo Nix has had such a promising rookie season, although he did airmail multiple key throws in the late stages of the game. But, to even get there, to even get to tying the game and saving, potentially winning the game, Bo Nix had to make 2 big throws to Marvin Mims, and it's clear that he really trusts Mims. That should further instill hope in the Mile High. So, yeah, another deflating loss for Denver, but they got one more chance to nab a playoff berth against a Chiefs team that's probably going to rest its starters, because they already have the number 1 seed. So, unless the Chiefs want to be petty, but that remains to be seen. Meanwhile, down in the other side of LA, as the Rams hosted the Cardinals in what was a low-scoring affair, but the Ahkello Witherspoon, he came clutch for the Rams with a game-sealing interception in the end zone on Kyler Murray to get the Rams closer to the NFC West, 13-9. And then for the Rams, this was more about their defense than their offense. Their defense has been playing well recently, but in the playoffs, it's got to be a little bit of a balancing act, because, yeah, Stafford has been pretty off recently. Maybe a little too reliant on Puka Nacua. Now, I get Cooper Kupp is not the same player he once was, because he was only targeted just once in this game. But, man, you got to, Stafford has to get him more involved in this one. And if they keep being too reliant on Nacua, they're not going to go far in the playoffs. One and done. So everyone's got to wake up from their current slump. Meanwhile, for the Cardinals, it's another typical December collapse from them, whether it's with Cliff Kingsbury or Jonathan Gannon. The Cardinals just seem to find a way to really slump, especially even before they get eliminated, before they even reach January, and even after they get eliminated from playoff contention. And one of those things have to revolve around Kyler Murray. Sure, you can look at the stats sheet and says, okay, he passed through for over 300 yards. He made some of these nice throws, but he continues to let his team down when it matters most, in crunch time. He threw 2 costly interceptions in the fourth quarter. Although, to be fair, the second one wasn't his fault. Trey McBride, he really should have caught that one. He should have been ready for that habanero hot ball. But before that, though, he won't push the ball downfield. He took needless sacks, and one of them was a really bad big one that forced the Cardinals to punt. These needless sacks kills a team's momentum. So it makes you wonder for Arizona, do they bring in that quarterback to compete with Kyler Murray? It's something to consider. So now going to the Sunday slate of games, starting with the early morning portion, as the New York Giants took on the Indianapolis Colts. And surprisingly, the Giants actually won this game by forcing 3 key turnovers, while Drew Lock torched the Colts for 4 touchdowns to eliminate them from playoff contention, 45-33. And, I'm not sure why exactly the Giants want to hop on the bandwagon and join the Raiders on this. but they decide to lose by winning this week. Like, I really don't get it. Like, they either must have saw what the Raiders were doing last week and wanted to outdo them, or they also were seeing what the Raiders were seeing in one of the quarterback prospects in the bowl games this past month, and were like, uh-oh, red flag alert. I don't know. But I don't know what exactly the thought process of the Giants in, winning these meaningless games when they were in position to get the number 1 overall pick with 2 weeks left to go. I don't know. Maybe one of these quarterback prospects don't want to go to an organization like the Giants, and then the Giants are like, fuck it, we're going to fuck up our draft positioning. I don't know. But I don't know. Maybe the Giants don't want the number 1 overall pick. They don't want the pressure of it. Anyway, the Colts, though, like, boy. Like, you had a chance to somewhat make the playoffs without Anthony Richardson, and I get it, and had a factor in this as well. But boy, like, you couldn't make it, like, at least a respectable way to bow out of the playoff dance. Like, again, I get it. You understandably underperformed, but that defense, it's sold out to the worst offense in the NFL. An offense that doesn't have a quarterback. An offense that has one of the, if not the worst offensive line in the NFL. And yet, it sells out. This defense sells out. Like, this Colts team really has some questions to address in the offseason. It's no wonder Pat McAfee went on this tirade, this essay on Twitter. But hell, at least you have the Royal Rumble to look forward to next month. Like, at least you have that and WrestleMania and a SummerSlam to look forward to in the next couple of years, right? Right? Meanwhile, in Western New York, Josh Allen and the Bills took on the New York Jets, but it was pretty much light work for the Bills. They dropped the 40 bomb on Aaron Rodgers and this disgruntled Jets to lock up the AFC's 2 seed in an easy win, 40-14. At this rate, with 2 weeks left to go, there's nothing much to take away or much to say from what we've already seen from the Bills. But what we can't take away from the Jets is, they once again need to move on from Aaron Rodgers this offseason. He's pretty much bringing his toxic habits that he had with the Packers, and he's like really setting them ablaze with the Jets. Like, this offense is completely spiraled downward, and there's now murmurs about Garrett Wilson, the once top receiver for this team, potentially wanting out if Aaron Rodgers were to stay on this team. Gang Green better make the right call once the lights go out on their season next week. Meanwhile, in the land of all elite, the game of sacrificial draft positioning happened between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Tennessee Titans. How were the Jaguars going to follow up on the world's ending in AEW? That pay-per-view happening the day before? Well, Mac Jones sucked less than Mason Rudolph. He threw for 2 touchdowns, and the Jaguars made the Titans' late comeback fall. Unfortunately for the Jaguars, though, fall short, as the Titans were the real winners of this game of sacrificial draft positioning, losing to the Jaguars 20-13. So the Titans, again, were the real winners by losing, and they are in full gear for at least the 2nd overall pick if they lose next week to the Texans. So it's not the Giants. It's not a team I'm going to mention later. No, it's the Titans that are in full gear. They control their own destiny of one of the top draft prospects in next year's draft if they lose to the Texans next week. Will they do it? We'll see. We'll see if any one of these tanking teams want the top 2 picks in the NFL draft. I mean, we'll see if anyone wants it at this point. Meanwhile, in the center of brotherly love, well, there's certainly no brotherly love shown to the Dallas Cowboys, as C.J. Gardner-Johnson's early pick 6 set the tone for a Philadelphia team that, despite not having Jalen Hurts, they flew all over the Dallas Cowboys with the 40 bomber to clinch the NFC East, that being Philadelphia, beating the Dallas Cowboys 41-7. So now that they wrapped up the NFC East, they locked up the 2 seed. Nick Sirianni's got to make a choice to make with Jalen Hurts because, I mean, it's not certain. It hasn't been made official of whether or not he's cleared concussion protocol because it's still, at the time of this recording, still early in the week. But he, regardless if he has or not, he's going to have to clear concussion protocol either way. It's uncertain of whether or not your Sirianni wants to play Jalen Hurts just to get him fresh for the playoffs. But with Pickett dealing with the rib injury, so Sirianni's gonna have to make a decision. As to whether to make Jalen Hurts play, or have Jalen Hurts play, or just have Tanner McKee, play the whole game next week. So Sirianni's gonna have to make some choices for next week's game against the Giants. Meanwhile, down in the Big Hard, the Raiders took on the Saints in another game of sacrificial draft positioning. And once again, the Raiders were the one to outsuck the Saints. No, not outsuck. Outdo the Saints. Because Aiden O'Connell decided to play like God. Ugh. And torch the Saints with a decent 2-touchdown day to pull away from them 25-10. And again, does anyone want the number 1 overall pick in this draft? Did the Raiders and the Giants miss the memo on the number 1 overall pick in the draft? Or are they seeing something in this quarterback class that us filthy casuals are very likely not seeing? Why are they so actively avoiding the number 1 overall pick? They need a quarterback next year. The quarterbacks that they have right now are not on this roster. The franchise quarterback is not there. Yet they're both winning games at the worst possible time. And only 2 other teams, or at least quote unquote, winning right now. So at least 2 teams are getting it right. And there's one other team that doesn't need a quarterback that's also doing it right. And that team is the New England Patriots, who have the number 1 overall pick. And they're either going to use that number 1 overall pick to get the best available player, or they're going to use it as bait for one of these QB needy teams. So what are the Raiders and the Giants doing, man? What are they doing? Meanwhile, down in Tampa Bay, the Bucs took on the Panthers, and Baker Mayfield dropped 5 touchdowns on the Panthers in a needed rebound game from last week for the Bucs to keep its playoff hopes alive, beating the Panthers 48-14. And yeah, Tampa needed this kind of performance, even against a scrub-ass team like Carolina. And, well, they're going to need to do it again next week if it wants to clinch the NFC South, especially considering what happened to the Falcons later on that day. Going to the late afternoon slate of games, the Miami Dolphins took on the Cleveland Browns as Tyler Huntley filled in just fine for the inactive Tua Tagovailoa, throwing and running for a touchdown apiece to keep the Dolphins' slim playoff hopes alive for one more week, beating the Browns 20-3. So for the Dolphins, to keep its very slim playoff hopes alive, they're going to need some help next week from the B Squad Chiefs to make the playoff dance. But they're also going to need Tua to keep their own hopes alive to beat a deflated Jets team. So something's at stake for a once defeated Dolphins team. Meanwhile, we had the Minnesota Vikings take on the Green Bay Packers in a major NFC North matchup in a rematch from week number 4. I remember if it was week 4, but either way, a NFC North rematch from this season as the Vikings jumped out to a 27-10 third quarter advantage, but they had to survive a 15-0 Packers onslaught in the fourth quarter until Sam Darnold got a key first down to CJ Ham to survive 27-25. And that pretty much sets up this winner-take-all matchup next week between the Vikings and the Lions for the NFC's top seed, which should be a lot of fun. This is going to be one of the cool kids nowadays. Cinema. Yeah, sit him up, pal. Meanwhile, for the Packers, I mean, if you really want to instill confidence in your team going to the playoffs, like they really need to perform better. They need to perform better in this game. And yet they came out flat. They were down double digits early, like in the third quarter. And yeah, they need to get more out of Jordan Love. And they'll be one and done in the playoffs if Matt LaFleur doesn't get Jordan Love to start faster in this game. Like he needed this quarterback to have a faster start in his game, and yet he had to once again come from behind. And well, he almost got there, but he didn't. Then we had the Sunday Night Football game for week number 17, as we had a thriller. We had a really fun one, a barn burner, as the Commanders took on the Falcons. Two rookie quarterbacks from this past draft, as Jane Daniels led the Commanders back from a 17-7 halftime deficit to take a 24-17 lead going to the late stages of the fourth quarter. But Michael Penix Jr. wouldn't go quietly into the night in just a second start, as is connected with Kyle Pitts with a minute left to go in the game to tie it. However, the game-winning kick for Atlanta failed. Backup kicker Riley Patterson, it fell short. His kick fell short, and Daniels led his offense on a long drive in the extra period, which eventually saw him connect with Zach Ertz to punch the playoff ticket for the Commanders as well as the Rams into the playoffs, 30-24 in the extra period. Man, oh man, what a game this was! Like, both quarterbacks did pretty well, although the clock management was pretty piss poor. It was pretty piss poor, admittedly. But yeah, Jane Daniels, he once again had another star-making performance under the bright lights of prime time. He bounced back from a subpar first half to look like the rookie of the year that he has been in the second half. And in the extra period, in the slicing of the Falcons defense, especially as a runner. So when you look at this Commanders team going to the playoffs, even if they are one and done, they're certainly not going to go quietly into the night. Meanwhile, for the Falcons, it's only his second game, but I feel like Michael Penix Jr., he performed very, very well. He answered the call of trailing in clutch time, made multiple big throws, threw a game-time touchdown. Unfortunately, it was just undone by the very poor clock management by Raheem Morris. Like, why the hell are you not calling any of your 2 timeouts with 32 seconds left to go? There's still plenty of time to get Riley Patterson into much better field goal range, yet you didn't call a timeout. Like, you just lackadaisically waited until 19 seconds after you ran another play, and you weren't even past midfield yet. Like, why? You set Riley Patterson up to fail. And when he already doinked, I believe he's the one that doinked the kick, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, Raheem Morris set Riley Patterson up to fail, and in turn, the Falcons' season is on the cusp of Cancun. Yeah, good job on that one. Meanwhile, then we had the Monday Night Football game where initially I thought it was going to be the one where the NFL decided to fuck with all of us. But I mean, it still fucked with us, just not in the way I expected. But nonetheless, a pair of Brock Purdy interceptions in the second half allowed the Lions to pull away with this one via touchdowns from Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jahmyr Gibbs, as the Lions got the win 40-34 in Santa Clara. But if you're the 49ers, Brock Purdy's latest elbow injury, which, well, fortunately, there's nothing structural torn. It should spell a cause for concern in the upcoming contract extension talks for Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. So, yeah, they can't feel good about handing out this big fat contract extension right now, because this is like the third time that this happened to Brock Purdy. Like, you can't go into next season knowing that this could be a real issue if he gets hurt like this in his throwing arm again. Yeah, You're going to have no real backup option if this happens, especially if you consider him your franchise quarterback. And again, reiterates the point that you need a real offensive line. Like, Kyle and John cannot slack on that offensive line any longer. Like, they need depth at that sore spot. Meanwhile, for the Lions, like, they really need to bring a much better performance in next week's winner-take-all game against the Vikings. Like, I know their defense is so paper thin right now, but to get torched by this injury-riddled Niners offense, I mean, like, come on, like, and again, it was a meaningless game, but still, you can't have that. So that was your week. That was week number 17 of this 2024 season, the penultimate season. A lot to unpack in this one. The playoff spots in the NFC are pretty much set. There's just still seeding to be resolved, and 6 of the 7 AFC playoff spots are fulfilled. And there's one more left to go, ladies and gentlemen. We'll talk about more of that in the next segment, which will be the week that will be week number 18. So before we get into the week that will be week number 18, let's go into my stars of the week for week number 17. And the first star is Commanders quarterback Jaden Daniels. He grew for 24 of 36, 227 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. He did have an interception early in the first quarter, and then 127 rushing yards. So many of those rushing yards, very critical in that win against the Falcons. Bengals receiver T. Higgins, 11 catches, 131 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns, including the game winner in overtime against Denver. And then the Ravens defense, not many game-changing plays, but 5 sacks, 1 interception, and the caveat, just 2 points. Just 2 points allowed on C.J. Stroud and Texans on Christmas Day. So that's why they're one of the stars of the week here on Very Cold Lasagna. So let me know your stars of the week. Let me know your takes for week number 17. Let me know it all. How your team did or didn't do in this packed week that was week number 17. So now, the regular season finale, week number 18. It's a week that either means something or is completely meaningless for you. It means that you're either going in with all this excitement, you're tense, or if you're like me, it means absolutely nothing because your team is doing absolutely nothing. Whether it's like, well, they already clinched a playoff spot, or like they're locked into their certain seeding, so the team has basically rested their starters, or your team's like me. They're eliminated for playoff contention. They're already thinking about Cancun. So we're already ready for the offseason. That's basically my team. So that's basically what week 18 is. It's either something to fight for, or it's an exhibition game. So that being said, let's take a look at the playoff picture as we see it heading into the final week of the regular season. So we already know who's in. The Bills, the Chiefs, the Lions, the Eagles, the Steelers, the Texans, the Vikings, the Ravens, the Packers, the Commanders, and the Rams. So we already know those teams are in. But the teams that are ready for their January Cancun cruise, the Giants, the Raiders, the Jaguars, the Patriots, the Jets, the Browns, the Titans, the Panthers, the Bears, the Saints, the Cowboys, the Cardinals, my 49ers. And joining them are the Colts and the Seahawks. How did the Seahawks get in here? Well, they somehow lost the strength of victory tiebreaker to the LA Rams, which allowed the Rams to clinch the NFC West thanks to the Washington Commanders, winning that Sunday night game over the Falcons, which clinched their own playoff spot. So that's why the Rams are in and the Seahawks are out. So a lot of stake still on the line, whether it's via seeding or the last couple of last very select few playoff spots on the line in this one. So let's get into the week that will be, the final week that will be in the regular season. week number 18. And let me just say, whether you have joined me along for this journey, the very small few of you that joined me on this journey in the regular season, I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you for joining me. So week number 18 begins with a Saturday doubleheader on ESPN as the Cleveland Browns at 3-13 take on the Baltimore Ravens at 11-5. The Ravens have a chance to lock up the AFC North with the win against the quarterbackless Cleveland Skidmarks, who hold the fate of both the Steelers and the Ravens in this AFC North race. But who will get the call to start a quarterback for those Skidmarks? Kevin Stefanski will have to decide on that. And it's interesting that this game was scheduled first when the Ravens, they have all the power to win or lose this game, to lock up the North. And if they somehow don't lock up the North, well, it's up to the Steelers, because at 10-6, the Pittsburgh Steelers host the 8-8 Cincinnati Bengals, which is another major game for playoff implications, because the Bengals' playoff lives are alive for one final week when they have to head out onto the road to take on a Steelers team that desperately needs to win and hope the Skidmarks can pull off some kind of miracle in Baltimore hours earlier. So even if the Ravens clinch the AFC North, the Steelers will still have something to play for when it comes to their wild card seeding. Like, they want to keep that 5th spot alive, because there's a major difference between playing in Houston and then playing in Baltimore again. So for the Pittsburgh Steelers, again, it comes down to try and play for hope that you can get the AFC North that you had unlocked for weeks, or playing for seeding, whether it's in Houston or in Baltimore. Then going to the Sunday slate of games, starting with the early morning portion, there's a mix of seeding matchups and a mix of plenty of meaningless matchups. That's the theme of week number 18. That's how it is. And it starts with the 4-12 Carolina Panthers taking on the 8-8 Atlanta Falcons, as the Falcons have one more chance to try and nab the division when they face Carolina. But once again, they no longer have control of their own destiny, as they will need Spencer Rattler to upset the Tampa Bay Bucks. They're also during that same time slot. More on that in a bit, because the Washington Commanders at 11-5 take on the Dallas Cowboys at 7-9. Jane Daniels in the Commanders will look to lock up the 6th seed in the NFC playoff race, but they're going to have to do so against a Cowboys team that, even though they got brutalized in Philly, they can still give the Commanders some problems. They still want to play with pride, pal, and that Washington defense still a bit sketch. Meanwhile, in Green Bay, the Packers will want to use this game against the Bears to fine-tune for the playoffs. But they got to hope Washington slips up in Dallas so they can avoid playing in Philadelphia. So the Packers still have plenty to play for when it comes to the 6th seed. So, yeah, if they somehow slip up here, they're in the 7th seed. And then in the first few of meaningless games, and actually it's the first games that somebody has to win before Cancun, we look at the all-elite Jacksonville Jaguars at 4-12, taking on the 7-9 Indianapolis Colts. Two teams that had aspirations of challenging the Texans this season, but instead they're facing each other to end their season, and in disappointing fashion. It's a season that's gone awry. The Jaguars dealing with underachieving and underperforming offense, and then you lose your starting quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, to injuries, and then your team overall just severely underperforms. And in the Colts, you deal with Anthony Richardson and his whole debacle of not being benched for 2 games, and then he's brought back, but then he also misses out on the last game with injury. And then you have the whole shebang with the culture in Indianapolis. Oof. Meanwhile, in Buffalo, in another game that somebody has to win, but not for Cancun reasons, unless you're the Patriots, because the Bills at 13-3 take on the New England Patriots at 3-13. Sean McDermott, he doesn't really have anything to play for because the Bills are locked into the 2 seed. But he hasn't made a decision on whether to rest the majority of the starters. Josh Allen is going to play for like a series or two. But this game against the Patriots, it doesn't mean anything for the Bills. But for the Patriots, they hold all the cards for the first overall pick. And this is also one last showcase for Drake May, especially at home against the Patriots. So if they do get the win against the Bills, I mean, sure, it's something. But do they want to? That's something. That's another conversation to be had. Then we have the New York Giants at 3-13 taking on the 13-3 Philadelphia Eagles. Just like with the Bills, they had the 2 seed locked up. But the question becomes whether Nick Sirianni wants to play his starters to keep them fresh, including Saquon to break the single season rushing record, and then Jalen Hurts, who could use some playing time coming off the concussion that kept them out the last game against the Cowboys. Because you don't want to have your starting quarterback rusty going to the first playoff game the following week. Meanwhile, down in Tampa, the Tampa Bay Bucks take on the New Orleans Saints as the Bucks once again have control of their playoff destiny. All they got to do is beat up on the hapless Saints at home, and the NFC South is theirs. Now, unless they somehow slip up this game, the Panthers are going to be their best friend to take care of Atlanta. Then we have another one of those meaningless games as the Texans at 9-7 take on the Tennessee Titans at 3-13. They're pretty much locked into the 4th seed, so DeMeco Ryans is going to have to make a decision on whether to play starters for one quarter or not at all. In what's basically a warm-up game against the Titans team that's going to be playing both of its quarterbacks for probably one quarterback in one half, the other quarterback in another half. This Titans team is basically ready for an offseason full of quarterback questions, and they're pretty much in control for the 2nd overall pick. And if the Patriots don't let up on that number 1 overall pick, well, the Titans are basically in full control of picking the first quarterback in this upcoming draft. Going to the late afternoon slate of games, my San Francisco 49ers at 6-10 take on the Arizona Cardinals at 7-9 in what's basically going to be a toilet bowl in the desert. Yeah, what better way to end the season, right, than a toilet bowl? Kyle Shanahan, you better do what's right and outsuck Jonathan Gannon. Do what's right, pal. Do what's right. Meanwhile, the Kansas City Chiefs at 15-1 take on the Denver Broncos at 9-7. A game with the biggest implications for the last AFC playoff spot. Denver is going to have to beat a bunch of Chiefs backups in order to get the spot. It should have gotten by now. Like, the fact that they haven't gotten it, it's a bit concerning. Otherwise, it opens the door for either the Dolphins or the Bengals to grab it. So if the Bengals win the previous day, you'll be really watching this game and the next game we're going to be talking about in just a bit, because the Seattle Seahawks at 9-7 take on the 10-6 LA Rams. And this game is basically meaningless for the Rams because, well, actually not really, because they still got seeding at play. But Sean McVay hasn't really made a decision on whether to play his starters. But he would surely like to with the way his offense has been playing. Also, they're going to be going up against a Seahawks team that's probably pissed at the way they were eliminated via strength of victory bullshit. And with seeding still at stake, yeah, Sean McVay could consider it. Meanwhile, down in Las Vegas, the LA Chargers at 10-6 take on the 4-12 Las Vegas Raiders. So even though the Chargers still have a shot at the 5 seed, they would need some help from a Bengals team. Once again, it's fighting for its playoff lives in much need of help. So, yeah, the Chargers are going to need the Bengals to beat the Steelers to have a crack at that number 5 seed to face Houston in the upcoming playoffs. But, of course, they got to take their own care of business against a Raiders team that, for some reason, wants to keep winning now. And doesn't want to have a high draft pick. Like, why? Like, why do teams want to avoid being the top 10 in the draft? Like, I don't get it. Not in the top 10, the top 5. Like, is this draft class really that weak? But anyway, And yeah, going back to that last AFC wildcard spot, the Miami Dolphins at 8-8 take on the New York Jets at 4-12. The Dolphins somehow alive for that last AFC wildcard spot, but whether Tua will play in this game and is another question. And even if they beat the disgruntled Jets, they'll need the B squad Chiefs to beat the Broncos to sneak into the playoffs. So yeah, they're gonna need some help from the B squad Chiefs to make it into the dance. Then we have the Sunday Night Football game. Probably, I don't know. Can you call it the most anticipated game of the year? The most anticipated lead up of the game of the year? I don't know. You tell me. Because we have the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions, both 14-2. Winner take all for the NFC North. Winner take all for the NFC's top seed. Winner take all for home field advantage throughout the NFC playoffs. The loser of this game has to start on the road, the number 5 seed, whether it's in LA, whether it's in Tampa. The loser has to start there. They start on the road in the playoffs. The winner of this game gets the lounge for 2 weeks. Like, what more can you ask for in this game? These are two teams that have been habanero hot all season. They just keep finding ways to win. But for the Vikings, they're out for payback from their close loss to the Lions back in week 6. But they've been right on their heels against Detroit all season long, for not just for the division, but for the top overall spot in the conference. But the Lions look to have that top seed in order to get their players healthy on defense. So, yeah, this is going to be a very interesting game. A very fun game to end the regular season. So, in case you haven't figured out like how the playoff field has not been set in stone yet by the end of week 18, here's how things can go down in a nutshell. In the AFC, the Ravens win the AFC North by beating the Skid Marks, aka the Browns. The Steelers win the AFC North by beating the Bengals, or by some chance, the Browns beat the Ravens. The Broncos clinch the last AFC playoff spot if they beat the Chiefs. And if they don't do that, the Dolphins win the last AFC playoff spot if they beat the Jets, and the Chiefs beat the Broncos. And the Bengals win the last AFC playoff spot if they beat the Steelers, and the Jets and Chiefs beat the Dolphins and Broncos. So, you got all that on the AFC side of things. In the NFC side of things, it's much, much simpler. The Bucs win the NFC South by beating the Saints. The Falcons, on the other hand, they win the NFC South if they beat the Panthers and the Saints beat the Bucs. So they need to have two things happen to them. The winner of the Vikings and the Lions get it all. The NFC North and the NFC's top seed. The loser becomes the 5 seed. They start either in LA or in Tampa, depending on the seeding between the Rams and the Bucs. So, yeah. Still a lot to sort out in this week 18. And there are still plenty of teams ready to go home to Cancun on that January Cancun cruise. And yeah, by the end of this week 18, we'll once again know who's ready for the dance, who's ready for the January playoff dance. And we could be in for either some fun shenanigans or some blowouts, some anticlimactic blowouts to end this regular season. What's been honestly kind of a I don't know how to say Some of it's been good. Some of it's been a very mixed year in the NFL. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. Let me know your predictions. Let me know how your team will or won't do to finish off their 2024 NFL regular season in the comments on YouTube, on social media at Very Cold Lasagna. Let me know in the comments on YouTube or on my socials at Very Cold Lasagna. But yeah, let's have a conversation about week 17 and week 18. And until the next episode, this is Very Cold Lasagna, the podcast for all the filthy casual takes on the world of sports. I have been your host, Dylan Lasagna. And yeah, like I said, keep that lasagna very cold in the fridge. Your takes on the world of sports Follow me on social media at Very Cold Lasagna, whether it's on Twitter or Instagram. Listen to the show wherever you get your podcast. Watch the show. Subscribe to it on YouTube. And until I see you, when I see you in the next one, peace out.